Hello, welcome back. We're happy to see you. You've been getting lots of background and theory this morning, the building blocks of our program. And now we're very happy to present you 3 actual units, elementary units, as they were delivered in the classroom. You'll see teacher materials, you'll see student work, you'll have lots of informative comment by the teachers who actually taught these 3 units. They're actually turning theory into practice, and that's the goal of this presentation. We recorded the presentation, but we're all here live to participate in the chat and then for questions and answers at the end. You'll see a brief introduction with a bit more background information, and then you'll go on to the 3 units. So we can start the video.
Good.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. We're happy to see you here and to share with you how our world language curriculum framework works, particularly in the elementary grades. I'm Kathy Maravid, a long-term educator and a long-term member of our curriculum framework project. And I'm here with Julio Romero, Rima Nasser, and Melik Haddad. And we've been working on the project all along, but we've been working most recently on the elementary units and the elementary aspects of the program. Next slide, please, Julio. Today, we plan to do a brief actually designed and how they could be further designed. And as they were taught, at the end, we'll have a few minutes to answer questions. We'll all be here live. Just to review, this is the full K-12 curriculum framework for world language programs. It's available on Atlas and on the Project AERO Live Binder website. We'll give you those links at the end. It's a complete framework with current philosophical underpinnings and with 5 instructional units all developed and ready to go at each grade level. It's very much related to the excellent work that ACTFL does, but it's expanded and designed to answer to the specific world language environments that we find in international schools. The framework is based on elements that constitute world-class world language programs. It's inquiry-based and content-based. It's connected to the core curricula, other subjects in international school curricula. It's aligned to the AERO 2018 standards and benchmarks. It's undergirded by principles of social emotional learning and findings in educational policy by organizations like the OECD. It builds language proficiency and cultural and global competence. And it promotes the cognitive benefits that come with long-term language study. So those elements I just listed give students a path, and their administrators and their teachers and their parents too, a path for moving from the beginning of each grade to the end, and from grade K up through grade 12. And once students are on the path, they know where they've been, they know where they're going, they know how to get there. And that's good, because any road is good if you don't know where you're going. We do have short sequences as well in schools where there are circumstances where you might want a 2, a 4, or a 6-year program. We have those in the standards and benchmarks. Particularly if students want to add a 2nd world language or a 3rd world language into their study, These are students who have language learning skills already, and they may not need the full 13-year length to acquire the language and the global competency that language study brings. So students might want to, schools might want to use the shorter sequences for that. If a school needs to use a shorter sequence because of a time availability or the COVID situation, of course, these sequences won't lead to the depth and breadth of learning and knowledge and skills that the longer sequence will lead to. Okay, next slide, please, will you? Just the one just before that, please. Let me check. Yeah, that one, thanks. So when we have no path, we might plan our unit and our instructional activities based on a random topic, maybe one that students would like, and we design our activities so that because we want students to enjoy them, or because of the materials we have, etc. And then at the end of a few weeks, we think back about what we've taught, and we design an assessment to test students on what they've learned. And that's how we might plan. But that's a little bit like the archer who shoots the arrow and goes and draws the target around wherever the arrow landed. That archer is going to when the students are on the path, knowing where they've been, knowing or their administrators. Question for each grade, and then 5 sub-questions. And these are the sub-questions relating to the general theme that guide each of the 5 units. The questions are connected to the curricula of international schools, as I said, and also to what students themselves want to learn. The members of our project ask their students what they would like to be discussing, and that had an important part of our decision on the questions as well. So the questions provide engaging content for students to explore as they learn the target language through explicit instruction, but also through learning the language to build and construct their own knowledge. You'll see some of these questions at work in the 3 units that we'll be presenting. Okay, next slide, Julio, please. So we have our content, our thematic content. Next, we need our learning goals, our language and culture goals, and we get those from the AERO 2018 standards and benchmarks. This slide shows the communication benchmarks for grade 4. And of course, there are benchmarks for the other C's involved in the standards and benchmarks. Communication, culture, connection, comparison, and communities. These are just the communication benchmarks. If you, just as an example, if you look at the top middle benchmark, it says, identify key information from announcements and messages connected to daily activities in the target culture. So that's one skill that students will be learning and practicing during this unit, and that they will need to apply when they do their assessment task, their assessment project. Next slide. So we have our inquiry theme from the questions, and we have our learning targets from the standards and benchmarks, and we tie it all together into an instructional unit using the backward design process, understanding by design, or UBD. So we have our content, we have our learning goals, and the next thing is to design our assessment. before we even think about what activities we're going to be teaching the students. An assessment that reflects the theme and that will require students to apply those skills to the assessment. And finally, once we know the assessment, then we design the lessons and the learning activities that will train the students and give them the knowledge and skills they need to do a good job on that assessment. It's like the students know what the assessment will be, or they'll know the general outlines of what the assessment will be. Just like a runner who knows that he's going to be running 100 meters or 200 meters and practices for that performance assessment. So in that sense, we're like coaches. Here's a quick example of an assessment of this type, and that's on the next slide, please, Julio. Okay. Here we have a summary of a 4th grade assessment and the questions, unit question and your question that go with it. So the grade level question is, how do systems work globally and locally? And the particular unit question for this particular unit is, how does my community work? And this unit could be developed around banking, shopping, restaurants, transportation, other aspects of community systems. In this case, we developed the unit around the transportation system. So at the bottom of the slide, you have the summary of a grade 4 assessment. The actual assessment has greater detail than this. This is just the summary because the students need greater guidance. So that assessment says, authentic problem. How will their family get to places of interest from their hotel in a new city? What will it cost? They'll work with maps and online informational sites in the target language and create an information sheet for their parents to use on their trip. If you recall the benchmark we used for the example we looked at, which said identify key information from announcements and messages connected to daily activities in the target culture, you'll see how that benchmark has been targeted in this assessments as the students work with transportation websites, maps, etc. And of course, the other benchmarks will also be addressed in the assessment. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So that's the theory. Now let's see how this actually works in elementary classrooms. We'll take a deeper dive and see how they actually looked. Our first presenter is Julio Romero at the American School of Doha, Qatar, and he'll present a unit for 1st grade. Okay, Julio, over to you.
Thank you, Kathy. So, hello, my name is Julio Romero Romeral, and I'm a Spanish elementary teacher at the American School of Doha. And I've been working with the people that is right now on the Zoom on the elementary units. We have been working from KG to grade 5. And I'm gonna focus right now on grade 1. The big overarching question of this grade level, I'm gonna describe the first unit we talked. This is the first unit in the continuum. So when we were choosing this unit, we were looking at how it connects to the general curriculum of the school. And specifically this year, we have started online because of the COVID situation. And actually for languages, we are still teaching online because the students cannot mix groups to come to our classes. So technology at the beginning of this school year was a really important part of the learning activity. Students needed to be able to use different technological gadgets to be able to access their learning. So this unit, how do I describe myself, was a very technologically based unit. So it really allowed us to connect with the rest of the teachers and focus on this idea of empowering learning and digital citizenship. So it was a great way to connect with all the different subject areas at the beginning of this school year with all this online setting. Then also in grade one of the first unit they learn in counseling is getting to know yourself, which really connects to this unit. Also in this unit, it covers a lot of the basics of the language that for us was really important because they don't have Spanish in kindergarten. This is the first year they start learning the language, and this unit allowed us to touch base with the alphabet and with some of the main vocabulary and grammar rules that we needed to start learning Spanish. So I'm going to start with the assessment, having the end in mind. And the first part of the assessment, it was planned for students to create a description of themselves. And they were going to create a writing piece telling us the color of their eyes, the characteristics of their hair, defining some physical traits, and also maybe telling us where they were from, the colors of their flag. And then with these written descriptions, the students in the class were going to receive the description of some of their classmates, and they were going to create an avatar in an authentic website for Spanish with all the information they understood from the writing piece of their partner. Then in class, students were going to present their avatars, and students were going to be given their avatar created for them, so present their presentations. And then with those avatars, we could create like panels for the class, sitting charts, playing games like Guess Who, etc. But we needed to adjust it a little bit this year because of the virtual setting. So we had a main issue with the lack of interactivity. So we decided to go ahead, and the students were going to create the presentations themselves. They were going to write it, and they were going to create their avatars as well. And then they were going to record themselves presenting this description. And we were going to play a Guess Who game in Zoom, where the students have to understand what they were listening to be able to guess who was who in their classes. So here you have a couple of examples of student work that you can see they were creating the descriptions, they did their avatars, and in CISO, they recorded the presentation as well. So which standards and benchmarks were covered? So we covered the 5 Cs. Of course, in each unit, we cover at least one benchmark from each one of the Cs. And in the communication standards, we cover with the presentation and the descriptions, we were covering the interpersonal and the presentational mode. And with the Guess Who game, we were covering the interpretive mode of communication. The part of the countries they were from and the countries that speak Spanish was part of the culture standards. The sound and writing system of the language was the comparison standard. And finally, all the technological parts of the unit with the connections and the communities. So here you can see an example of the rubrics we were using. As you can see, there's many items on the rubrics, and it's because we were addressing and assessing each one of the benchmarks we were covering through the unit, and also some for the teachers of how they felt, how we felt teaching this unit. So I'm going to show you a little bit how the class looks like. We are following an asynchronous mode. That means that we pre-record videos that the students watch at home, and then they do some activities. And also we have one Zoom session a week with them. So I use for recording a program that is called Screencastify or Screencast-O-Matic. They're really great for recording videos because you can see yourself and you can see the PowerPoint you're presenting. And it's very easy to edit later and upload it in the cloud and share it with the students. For activities, before we were using many different formats for handling work. For example, Flipgrid, we were having Google Forms, Google Docs, many different apps and websites. But we discovered that for first graders, it was very difficult to follow, to keep track of where was the work supposed to be handed in. So we decided to go just with CISO, that it's a great app where you can create your classroom and you can put there your lessons and students can submit their work there. And it's really easy to keep track of students' work and what they have been doing. For the students, it's so much easier to just go to one place to look for the videos, look for the lessons, look and do the work. Here is an example of one of the Zoom sessions. As you can see, we are doing Zoom from a school and students are wearing masks, which is not the best for language classes, but we're trying to make the best out of it. If you can see in this picture, we are all dancing a song, and even though the situation we're in, we're trying to give them the most enjoyable experience with what we have. I'm gonna show you now a little bit of the scaffolding of the unit. We started the unit teaching the alphabet. We thought that dipping our feet on the sound and writing system of the language was very necessary to be able to later be able to write the descriptions and to presenting. So we started working on this alphabet. Then we moved to the basic vocabulary they needed for the unit. So we started learning the parts of the body. Also, we look at some grammar. In this case, you can see that we were writing the vocabulary words in singular and plural, and we were working on the articles el, la, los, las, feminine, masculine, singulars, and plurals. Then we started learning the adjectives. In this case, we started with the colors, and you can see here a piece of work from one of our students. She was gathering different objects from her house, and she was explaining to us which was the color of each one of those objects. If you can see at the bottom of the screen, there's a comment from my partner, my teaching partner, and she's giving feedback to this student. CISO has a wonderful thing that you can give feedback to all the activities your students do, so they can hear how well they did. You can do it in writing or in audio recording. And for a 6-year-old, sometimes decoding a writing message is hard to do. So we thought that we very like that CISO allows us to do voice comments, so it's way more meaningful for the students. Then with these colors, we were describing the different flags of the Spanish-speaking countries, and we were locating them in the map. We were telling how they look, which shapes they had, and also they were doing that with their own flags from their countries. Then here you can see we moved from these shapes, colors, to start describing things. In this case, we started with monsters. We love monsters, students love monsters, and one of the reasons we love them is because we can add so many things into them. We can add different parts of the body, colors, shapes, everything we wanted to work on with the students. So if you can see, in this class we were describing the monster that is in the middle of the picture, and the students were writing things about them, what they have, what they didn't have. If you have been teaching online, you know that unmuting yourself, speaking, technological problems happen all the time. So we discovered that having whiteboards really allow the students to always have a voice in the class, even though they cannot unmute all the time and be sharing with each other. So it really keeps them engaged during the lessons. We also do breakout rooms, so we have smaller groups to be able to have more communication with each other, but we also like to have all the group together to give them this idea, this ownership of group, like we are all together in the classroom. Then you can see another activity we did here. This is a guess who game we played that it was building up knowledge for the final assessment for the guess who in the Zoom with the descriptions. So here we were describing different monsters and they had to find who was who based on the written description. Here you can see how students kept on working on their skills, and here they are describing themselves, different monsters. Some of them drew their own monsters and described them, and then we also moved to describe different people. Finally, we were able to go to a website that is called from Pocoyo that allows us to create avatars with basic vocabulary in Spanish. And with that, they created their avatars and their descriptions as you saw before. When we asked for feedback of the students, many of them said that, of course, they love describing the monsters, and we knew that was going to happen. But many of them also said that they really enjoyed the Guess Who game in the Zoom session. So it's always really good to hear that the part they enjoyed the most of a unit was the summative assessment itself. And I just wanted to share very quickly a couple of examples of the next unit we thought, that is who are the members of my family. Is the second unit in the grade 1 curriculum. And this is the final assessment of that unit from one of our boys that picked this picture from his family and described each one of them in this piece of paper. And here you have another example of another student that take her picture from her trip to Disneyland, and she did a fabulous job describing her family. As I was saying, like students really enjoy this grade 1 curriculum because it's all about themselves and the people surrounding them. So you can see how much work they put into their projects. And with this, I'm gonna pass it to Malek, that is also gonna talk about grade 1 curriculum. So you will have a really great picture of the grade 1 curriculum. So Malek?
Thank you, Julio. So hello, everyone. My name is Malek Haddad. I'm Tunisian, and I'm a language teacher at the American Cooperative School of Tunis. This year, I teach Arabic for elementary students from kindergarten through 5th grade. Today, I'm going to present you a sample unit that I designed with the collaboration of other AERO World Language team members. It's Unit 2 for grade 1, and it's called What Do I and Others Like and Prefer? In this unit, students would consider how they, as well as the people around them, whether siblings or friends or teachers or parents, have different preferences and interests as related to animals, colors, weather, season, activities, and sport. And I must admit that I was very lucky this year because I didn't have to go on distance learning while I was teaching this particular unit. So I did it all on site and I didn't have to shrink or omit any interesting part. So the question is, why this question and why these subtitles or subtopics, I would say? Well, because they are age appropriate, they're everyday life topics of great interest to first grade students. And at this level, I guess, all first graders like to talk about themselves and speak about the things they like to do over the weekend and during breaks, also talking about their pets and the animal they would love to have as pets too. In science class, it happens that they're learning about weather and the characteristics of the weather too. So they get very excited to telling us about all the things that concern them. The next slide is shows where this unit comes from. Like Kathy stated it earlier, it is part of the thematic questions that guide our program from kindergarten to 12th grade. Basically, there are 5 units per grade level, and every 5 units have a big overarching question. Every unit has a unit summary, as is stated in the next in the next slide. Thank you, Julio. So it has a unit summary, an enduring understanding, and essential questions. The unit summary sums up what the students will be learning about in a particular unit, as well as what is expected of them at the end of this unit. Every unit has an enduring understanding, and we kind of try to make it very simple, less philosophical, and less complicated and vague. So the unit summary summarizes the important ideas that are central to the unit and has I would say, a lasting value beyond the classroom. The essential questions should be simple. We, as teachers, try to make sure that they are not yes/no questions because we're encouraging students to reflect and inquire. We often ask these questions at the very beginning to activate the students' prior knowledge and determine their interest for a given unit, and also to introduce the unit itself. The next slide shows the summative assessment for this particular unit, which is a dialogue between 2 students who will start with introducing themselves to each other, then start asking about their hobbies, about their interests, using the taught vocabulary in the target language. And in this case, it was Arabic. This assessment is authentic because it can happen in real life situation. When a new student comes to school and wants to learn more about his new friends and the people around him. And from my own experience, I can tell that new students tend to gather and spend more time with the student who speak the same language as them because they feel more comfortable interacting in their mother tongue, and mainly when they are not still comfortable with the language spoken at school, which makes this performance a real and authentic one. I would also say that the more authentic we go, the more willing students are at performing, and kids are really curious. They want to know why they are learning something. And I would say that as teachers, we have to persuade them and we have to convince them of the authenticity of the task they're doing. The next slide shows the, thank you, Julio, the standards and benchmarks for this unit. Like said by Julio and Kathy previously, it covers the 5 C's of the language learning, which are communication, culture, comparison, connection to other disciplines, and the use in the community. At the end of the unit and through the summative assessment that some teacher might call end of unit test or performance test, these standards and benchmarks should be all covered and met. So when we design a unit, we keep in mind the end, the learning goal, which is the end in mind. So what do we want the students to be able to do at the very end? Then we start writing our assessment that we align with the standards and benchmarks. And finally, we plan the lesson. And when we plan the lesson, we should give the students all the tools they need to be able to perform the final task independently. What follows in my presentation is a checklist. The checklist is would help the teacher assess the students on their performance. It's also a great tool for students to understand what is expected of them. It can also be shared with the parents to help them see what their kids are up to at a certain level. We can have a checklist or a rubric or both. All this depends on the teacher's expectation and the student's level and needs. But I do believe that for first graders, it's easy for them to deal with the checklist. It can help them see clearly if they met the learning goal and what are some areas of concern that they can still work at in the future. The following slides, and there are many of them, are concrete examples of what was taught during the lesson, during the lessons and the unit itself, and how it was done through scaffolding. So these are basically examples of lesson content and scaffolding that help the teacher bring the benchmarks and standards alive. Slides 38, 39, 40, so from this one until the 40th one, we started with learning about weather and seasons. Students learned to name the 4 seasons, then describe the weather through a bunch of different activities. Then they picked their favorite season in slide 41, I guess. Julio, yeah, the one that is after this one. Thank you. Yes. And they represented it through drawing. They labeled it, then spoke about it in front of their peers. And as those activities shows it, and it's clearer, I guess, in the next slide, Julio. Thank you. Thank you so much, Julio. So those activities show that how students moved from interpreting and reading to writing. So we could adjust, so we could address all the skills. Then in the next, yeah, they can, yeah, you can guys check these videos later. They are cute examples. So the next slides show the content and scaffolding for animals. So we learned about animals, and I guess this is particularly fascinating to students. It's a topic that they like a lot. So we kind of spend a long time digging into this subtopic. Students learned to name all sorts of animals. They learned how to write their names correctly. They associate them with their sounds, the habitat, what they eat, and all sorts of things. These slides show a strong commitment from the student and a lot of interaction among them. A lot of this work has been improvised as I moved on into the teaching and the learning, because the kids give you fantastic ideas that get you to do different things. And it's never enough to say that as you teach a unit, you can always adjust it to the students' needs and add details and parts that you didn't plan for before. Then you can make the necessary changes on Atlas later on. I should add that there is no rule imposing a chronology on teaching these subtopics like animals, colors, and hobbies. You can always choose to teach one of them first and then carry on with the rest, unless there is some connection or interrelation that imposes some particular choice on us. The next activity on the slide shows the move from speaking to writing, then present. I think it's the next one, Julio. Yeah, yes, the one after this one. Yeah, thank you. So this activity shows that we moved from the speaking part to the writing, then presenting, when students had to write about the animals they've seen at the zoo. Then the following slides, I'm gonna try to go fast. From 46 to 50, basically, these were the content about colors, sports, hobbies, likes and dislikes. So students had done all this through some make and think invisible strategies like think, pair, share, chalk talk, I see, I think, I wonder. So after teaching every subunit, every subtopic, I chose to close up with still need to be able to achieve the final task, that is the summative task, independently and confidently. The 50th has cute videos and of students speaking about the sports vocabulary, the variety of activities and instructional strategies target the 4 skills, which are listening, speaking, reading, writing. These activities should be different. So the students get motivated and interact, and the students are answering. So we're from me, from the parents, from the students. Thanks so much for your interest and for watching. Now I'm gonna pass it to Miss Rima from the American School of Doha. She'll present you a unit for the upper elementary school, that is 5th grade. Thank you.
Thank you, Malek. My name is Rima Nasser. I'm the Arabic teacher at the American School of Doha. I teach from KG to 5th grade Arabic, and it is my honor to work with a group of teachers on the AERO program and doing the elementary units. We're going to start with grade 5, unit 3, how do invention impact our lives? And the grade level question is, why do we explore, and what do we do? What do we do to learn from our exploration? In this unit, it's being taught in the hybrid and virtual, but this year, according to the COVID that we're having, it is mainly online at all times. This unit can be taught in different languages and adopted in different languages, and we are still in the process of working on this unit. This unit is dealing with our current situation. The students are learning, as I said before, virtual and hybrid, using different technologies at all times, and they are stuck next to a device at all times. This unit will help them express themselves relating to the current situation. When we give the summary of the unit, it will help them to know about the unit more, to stay focused, and it is also talk about the target of this unit. So the unit summary is that we are going to develop, it's developed around the final debate. We have a virtual learning is more valuable in class or valuable in class or outside. Virtual learning is more valuable than in class learning. Students may feel they are for or against, and students choose a place where the target language is spoken. They will research learning both online and in class in that place, and they will compare it to other schools. They will finalize whether they are with or against, and they have the freedom to choose. And using the research and their own experience and information that they create an idea sheet to help them in the debate. And also we have step-by-step checklists that will guide them as they work, and they are assessed on certain aspects of the debate itself and on their idea sheet. Next slide, please. We have the enduring understanding, as we know, the enduring understanding is based on the big idea, and that have a lasting value beyond the classroom. And the students will understand that technology is important in our lives. We learn in different ways. Technology can both help us learn and it can also complicate our learning. And there are guidelines for using technology positively. As for the additional essential question, it will help us organize our thinking. It will approach the curricular design through creative choice, and that highlights the focus of a course or a unit study. Usually the essential questions that we have are open-ended questions. They are kind friendly, and it helps to uncover the important ideas of the content. In this unit, we are the essential question is how does using technology affect us positively or negatively? Also, how easy and hard for us to have the access of technology around the world? What do we mean by technology environment of a place? What are the challenges that we face using technology? And how learning another language affect our use of technology? As for the summative, it incorporates a chance for the students to meet each of the targeted benchmarks of the 5 C's used in the unit. The instruction and learning activities prepare the students to do a good job, and it links back to the benchmarks and the learning goal. Here, the summative assessment that we have, authentic transfer task, as we said before, it is going to be a debate, and the debate is virtual learning is more valuable than in-class learning. They will gather information as using their own experience and data collection from members of their community. And also they will speak the language that they are learning, and it will be selected by media resources in the language. After identifying the positive and negative aspect, they will decide whether they are with or against. And as I mentioned before, they have the freedom of choice of being with or against. They are guided by a checklist that is provided by the teacher and organized and present their information on a document. And this document will be preparing them for the debate. They will participate in the debate and that is organized by the teacher. And after that, the debate, they will have the chance to listen to each other. And when they feel that they are satisfied, they have the freedom of turning the information to the teacher. As for the performance, we have, having discussed the stereotype related to the target language and the technology, students are asked to find a picture. And this picture is showing a stereotype, and it's shared and explained it briefly to the class. They will describe how learning language can contribute to avoiding stereotypes thinking. Now, if we're going to talk about the standards and benchmark, as we said before, I mentioned before, the standards and benchmarks help to ensure the curriculum alignment. Each benchmark is assessed, and at least as we said before, once during the year. Our summative assessment is related to the AERO standards benchmarks, and always we keep the end in mind. As you can see, we have in bold, they are the writing in bold, it talks about the standards, and the writing with light writing, it's the benchmark that we address in the unit. In this unit, we have addressed the 5 C's, the communication. In the communication, we have addressed the interpersonal mode and also the interpretive mode. We also have the culture, connection, comparison, and communities. Here we have the child is given guidelines to help them with the debate, and it is in the form of a checklist. and the child will be using it to help them. And in number 6, if we, when you have the time to read it, in number 6, the child will develop questions with the 3 or more that will use together information from the members of the family and his community. In the second slide that we have here, these are the some samples of the question. What is the technology environment in your community? And you can read it on your spare time and understand these questions. As for the before the debate, we need to have the child to be prepared. We need to explain what the debate is and what proposition is, show student examples of a debate, and also include mini debates as the students learn the concept, the concepts, the vocabulary, the structures. And we will also determine who is with and who is against. It will help them to do that. And you can see the checklist that we talked about before. And they will review the teamwork expectation and tasks with the students. We will do that. And we will act as facilitator to monitor as needed to help maintain the focus. But we have to keep in mind and remind the students of the debate etiquette, because it is very important for them to know that they should respect their opponent and the facilitator, and to listen when others are speaking, to take turns, respect the views of others. Also, they need to know that they will have a document that is prepared in front of them, but it is, we remind them that it is not to be read. It is just a sample of helping them when they need the help. And they should have at all times to maintain good eye contact with the audience, and of course using proper language and be polite in referring to their opposing team. And the most important, also to respect the time. Here we have the evaluation for the students. We have with and against, and the rating, general document, and the signature of the evaluator. Now we can start with the fun. The fun is when we are working with the students. This is the part where the students are more interacting, and they are providing what they have learned or what they are learning. We have resources like we took a story, and it's called Life Without Internet. And this boy is talking about how he woke up and he had a dream that there was no internet. And he starts to talk to his mom, and his mom is explaining how life was before internet. And this gave the students an opening door for them to communicate with other peers, and also to talk to their parents how it was when internet was not there, and talking about it. The second picture that we have is life before internet. I recommend that you watch this video. It is a really nice video. Some students are talking about ideas that they can have if there's no internet, how to play games, what are the things, how they are going to communicate, how they used to use phones, old phones. So it's really interesting and funny for you to watch. Also, where we have the picture of the teacher, the teacher will have a help desk for the students. In this help desk, she will have the vocabulary words needed, sites that they will be using during this unit. And also sometimes she will have students working together in a small group and asking questions back and forth, and they can use the think, pair, and share. In the second, in this slide here, when we are teaching this unit, we use different ways of teaching it. The students love playing Kahoot, and with Kahoot, they will have competition with against each other by, for example, they have a vocabulary word and they need to answer it, and the ones who answer quickly will be the winner. And the students, they love it because of the competition motivation and the excitement that is there. Quizlet is kind like, it's flashcards that help the students to learn the vocabulary words, or sometimes asking questions and the answer can be, you can flip the card and you can see the answers on the back. And also there are different games that you can play, like flashcards and things like that. So, according to what I've mentioned before, because we are teaching virtually, this unit, the Zoom is really important for us. And in the Zoom, we have different breakout rooms. And these breakout rooms help the teacher to differentiate and take these students and work with them in small groups, and giving them her feedback, and for her to go from one room to the other to see how the students are working. And the students working together in the debate, they have the chance to be facing each other and practicing the work. Here we have the students' work, and they are talking about how life without internet and about technology. And you know, in this students' work, we can see that the students is talking about that they love having internet, especially nowadays with the current situation that we're having. It helped them a lot to work and to be communicating with their peers and teachers and so on. But also at the same time, they express themselves how they are missing being in school, having the normal life of being in the classroom, playing with their peers and their friends. In this one here, you can press the recording and listen to the students. They are speaking in Arabic. In this recording, they're talking about how they think about technology, how it affects their life during the pandemic, how learning is virtual and nowadays, and how they are dealing with it. And they are speaking, you know, from their heart, and it really expresses how they are managing this pandemic and how it is affecting them. It is really, you know, as I said, you know, it's really, if you understand the Arabic, it's really good for you to listen to it and see how the students are dealing with the situation of the pandemic. Last but not least, we have the parents and teacher reflection. But as I mentioned before, we are still working on this unit. So you know, I had a couple of parents giving me their feedback up till now, and the parents are really happy with this unit because it gave their kids the confidence of speaking, and it also is related to something that they are facing now, and they feel, you know, interest of talking about it, and they feel, you know, that the urge that they need to talk about it and share it with the community around them. And also, as a teacher, we all know that the students love technology and it is part of their daily life. This unit is an eye-opener for them due to the pandemic, that they are losing and missing the normal life, being outside, being in the classroom, being with their peers. This unit really reflects our current situation and how they are dealing with it, thinking and reflecting on this situation, and coming up with ideas to help them pass this hard time. I really recommend that this unit to be taught in the class, to be taught for the students. It's really interesting up till now for them, and they are really learning about it. And I'm looking forward for the end result for the debate when they are presenting their last piece. And now I'm going to say thank you for listening to us, and I'll give the floor for Kathy again. Thank you.
Okay, well, I don't know if Kathy, can you mute yourself?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
here.
yes, I was muted. Thank you, Rima. Thank you, Julio. Thank you, Malik. That was very interesting. And I'm sure that, I hope anyway, that the main idea came across, which is that our students are learning language in many ways, as they always have, but with a philosophical and conceptual framework that makes their language work actual thinking, real knowledge pursuit, not just a memorization of abstract topics, but rather creating their own knowledge using the language that they're learning at the same time. These units are all developed in English at the time, most usually with a specific language in mind. So the units come complete with resources for that specific language. But we would be thrilled if you would be interested in teaching our units and then getting back to us as to how it went, how much your students appreciated, or if you saw any difference using the authentic assessment task, where the students are actually doing something with their language rather than just responding to what the teacher asked them. So thank you very much for coming. We're at the end of our recording and we'll all be here live now. I'm sure you have many questions and we'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we're at the question and answer time. There have already been some very meaty questions asked and answered on the chat. If you have any others, please do put them in the chat and we'll answer them orally here. And while you're thinking, I just want to re-emphasize that we would love it if you wanted to take one or more of our units and pilot them in your classroom and then get back to us with your thoughts. We would love to work with you. You might find some excellent resources that you could add that we could continue to build on our project. We just ask that if you do, that you give credit to this project. Since it's a work from everybody's heart, it's free for you to use. We ask just that you give credit.
Kathy, I might add just one comment to the questions that have been asked about which standards and benchmarks you can use. So if you're teaching in a country where the government of that country requires that you also meet standards and benchmarks that are created by that country's Ministry of Education, and I apologize, my watch is going off here. It would be a good idea to, usually those relate to native speakers or mother tongue speakers that are in those schools. And we have that situation around the world. It's not just in the Middle East, it exists in South America too, and throughout the Caribbean. What we did, it was to take both sets of AERO and then the ministry standards, whatever they might be. In the Arab world, we have the Queen Rania standards for native speakers. Those are different because they also have a literature, a literary, and a literacy strand to them that a native speaker needs to move through in a different pace. So we took all three of those types of groups of standards and looked at the model units that we created at that time ourselves, but now you could look at those up against these and see how you could expand a unit to meet the national standards, or the Queen Rania standards could collaborate together. And I think this afternoon in our very last session, those of you that are in countries that have mandated Arabic requirements and culture requirements will find Hanadi very capable of responding to how Beirut has blended both. And Malik mentioned how she has also done that for some mother tongue speakers in her classes. You know, there's a spectrum of students, right? They come from all over the world having heard their native language, maybe not speaking it. So you can feel free to blend these in a way that works well for you.
Thank you, Christy. I think that we're just very close to the end of the time we have. Please don't hesitate to get in contact with us if you have more questions. We'd be very, very happy to answer. I hope that this presentation has been enlightening and answered some of your questions. The next one will cover some units for the middle school, and that will start in about 30 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Julio. Thank you, Malek. Thank you, Rima. Thank you, Christy.
Bye, everybody. Thank all.
Bye.
of you.